Sophie Cunningham has agreed to a one-year deal to return to the Indiana Fever. Cunningham joins guards Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull in coming back to the Fever. Indiana has also added newcomers Monique Billings and Ty Harris so far this free agency. Sophie Cunningham coming back on a one-year deal. Kelsey Mitchell coming back on a one-year
deals, both of them. Sophie Cunningham and Kelsey Mitchell just signed one-year contracts with the Indiana Fever, and if you think that's a coincidence, you haven't been paying attention. This isn't about loyalty or team chemistry. This is Indiana hedging their bets, and the clock just started ticking on whether this roster can actually win a championship.
They're going to run it back with the main players, bring Monique Billings in, bring Ty Harris in, and see with a return of a healthy Caitlin Clark if this is enough to get it done. If not, they're going to pivot next year. This is the last chance to run this whole thing back, to do this song and dance one more time. Because after next season, AB is going to get paid, CC is going to get paid, and it's going to be time to build around those two as your main focal points. Caitlin Clark as your centerpiece.
Here's what those one-year deals actually mean. After next season, both Sophie and Kelsey come off the books at exactly the same time. And that's the same year Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark are due for massive contract extensions. The Fever aren't building for next year. They're positioning themselves for the year after, when they'll have to choose between keeping their veterans or paying their superstars what they're worth. And make no mistake, that choice has already been made.
AB, CC, and then hopefully Amber Cox will get her head out of her rear end and start putting together a team that makes us say, damn, we have it good over here. Puts together a team that makes CC say, damn, I want to stay here. You see what they're doing in New York. Why would Sabrina want to leave New York? Why would Stewie want to leave New York? Why would John Cole Jones want to leave New York? They see what their front office is doing. They see what their owner is doing. Kelly, Amber, Mr. Simon, you guys got to do.
Think about what New York just did. They didn't win a championship by accident. Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Jonquel Jones as your core three, but they surrounded them with Kennedy Burke, Leonie Fibich, Betnijah Laney Hamilton, Kayla Thornton, role players who knew their assignments and executed them perfectly. Indiana's trying to replicate that formula, but they're doing it on a trial basis, 1 year to prove this works. 1 year to see if Stephanie White's system can turn this roster into contenders. 1 year before they blow it up and rebuild around Caitlin Clark.
We're going to get into that a little bit later. Monique Billings off the bench, Ty Harris off the bench, AB at the 5. Let's see if the Indiana Fever are done or if they're going to continue to make more moves. Now, Monique Billings, she made a comment. I'm so excited for this new chapter with the Indiana Fever. Time to get to work. We have Monique Billings putting out another statement. Fit is one of the most important things in the WNBA. So finding an organization that made me feel wanted and valued was a big factor during this process, and Indiana checked all the boxes. Now, she also commented, I'm looking forward to building off a fruitful...
Now let's talk about what Indiana didn't get. Aaliyah Smith just signed a 3-year max deal with Dallas, $1 million per year. Yes, that's an overpay for someone who shot 51% from the free throw line. But Dallas decided she was worth it. Indiana looked at that price tag and walked away. Same thing with Gabby Williams, who's choosing between Las Vegas, Golden State, and Minnesota, not Indiana. The Fever aren't even in the conversation for the premium free agents this year.
You can't always get what you want. Gabby Williams, another person that the Indiana Fever, want. She's going to sign with one of 3 teams, according to ESPN's Andrea Carter. The Las Vegas Aces, the Golden State Valkyries, or the Minnesota Lynx. If Gabby Williams goes to the Aces, you got Asia Wilson, Jackie Young, Gabby Williams. That's solid. That's a solid 3. That's a solid 3. I must admit.
Monique Billings made an interesting comment when she signed. She said Indiana made her feel wanted and valued, that the organization checked all the boxes. She also mentioned building synergy with Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark during the offseason. That's the language of someone who's being sold on a vision, not someone who got a massive payday. Because here's the reality. Monique Billings has been a backup center her entire career. She started games sparingly, and now Indiana's potentially asking her to be a starter on a team with championship aspirations.
I'm going to say, Golden State Valkyrie. Golden State Valkyrie seems like a nice fit for Gabby Williams. Especially being over there in Golden State. You got a little bit of the international crowd over there. I like that. Minnesota Lynx. Minnesota Lynx get Gabby Williams. Nafisa Collier. Nafisa Collier is not going to be ready to go by the beginning of the season. So it's going to be Gabby Williams, Kayla McBride, if they do bring Kayla McBride back, which signs are pointing in that direction. And then whoever they get in the draft. And folks, we better hope that the Minnesota Lynx don't get Lauren Betts in this draft. Whoa, sheesh. Cheryl Reeve with the Lauren Betts. Let's just think real quick. Lauren Betts gets drafted this year. If Nafisa Collier doesn't come back, the Minnesota Lynx have a sub-10 win season.
Look at the roster construction right now. Caitlin Clark at the 1, Kelsey Mitchell at the 2, Sophie Cunningham at the 3, assuming she's fully recovered from her injury. Then you've got question marks. Aaliyah Boston at the 5, but who's your starting power forward? Because Monique Billings coming off the bench makes sense. Monique Billings as a starter on a contending team? That's a different conversation entirely. And this is where Indiana's strategy starts to look shaky.
Are they in the play for a top 8 pick next year? We don't want that. We don't want that. Let's get into some of the free agents that are still on the board. Number 1, Emma Miesemann. Now, Monique Billings is cool as a backup. I did a little bit of digging, cool as a backup. As a starter, Monique Billings only starts sparingly on the teams that she's played for. She's traditionally come off the bench. Only in Indiana would we say, okay, this person that's always been on the bench, we're going to make them a starter. This isn't a James Harden situation. Let's keep her coming off the bench. Emma Miesemann, now that's your starter right there. The only problem is Emma Miesemann fits more Stephanie White style of play.
Every team overpaid in this free agency period. Jessica Shepard got overpaid. Natasha Hightower's making over $800,000, which is an overpay. The market got inflated fast, and Indiana chose not to participate in the bidding war. They added Monique Billings and Ty Harris, both solid role players, but neither one moves the needle the way Aaliyah Smith or Gabby Williams would have. So the question becomes, are they being smart and patient, or are they being cheap at exactly the wrong time?
Free agency other than Gabby Williams, who's about to turn 30. You got Sammy Whitcomb, Michaela Onyenwere. Now, I wouldn't be opposed to Michaela Onyenwere. I would not be opposed to that. Kayla Thornton's going to get paid from the Valkyrie, I'm assuming, right? Kayla Thornton had a very good season last year. I'm assuming the Valkyrie aren't going to want to let her leave. And if she does, I'm sure another team's going to pay her more than Indiana would pay her. Dantis are already signed. Gustafson, Temi Fagbenle. I'm seeing rumors of Temi.
Here's the nightmare scenario that Fever fans need to consider. Minnesota Lynx finish with a sub-10 win season this year because Nafisa Collier isn't ready to come back at the start. They land a top 8 pick in next year's draft. And suddenly, Cheryl Reeve has Lauren Betts on her roster, alongside Nafisa Collier and Gabby Williams. That's a championship core built in 2 years while Indiana's still figuring out if their current roster can make it past the second round.
Quick, can I just give you a fantasy world that's not going to happen, but I want to just live in this fantasy real quick. If we could somehow get Gabby Williams over here, if the Indiana Fever can actually throw us a duffel bag full of cash, like they should, like New York does, like Las Vegas does, just a duffel bag full of cash. Then we can have Sophie and Lexi coming off the bench. Then I'd probably do some backflips because then our bench would be legit. Sophie off the bench, Lexi off the bench, Monique off the bench, Ty Harris off the bench. Then we can actually then we can really start saying, okay, all right, get an Emma Miesemann as a power forward. Okay, because I'm looking at this roster.
So what does success look like for Indiana next season? They need to prove this roster can compete for a championship, not just make the playoffs. Because if they fall short, the entire strategy changes. Caitlin Clark becomes the undisputed centerpiece, not just the star point guard. Aaliyah Boston gets paid. The salary cap gets tight. And suddenly you're looking at a completely different team in 2 years. One that's built around Clark's timeline instead of trying to win now with veterans on one-year deals. The Fever added depth. They brought back their core. They made safe, calculated moves. But safe doesn't win championships in this league. New York didn't play it safe. They went all in on their core 3 and surrounded them with the exact pieces they needed. Las Vegas has been aggressive for years, building around Atja Wilson with whatever talent they could acquire. Indiana's playing checkers while everyone else is playing chess. And that's what makes these one-year deals so telling. Kelly Krauskopf and the front office are saying we'll give this one more shot, but we're not committing long-term to anyone except our young stars. It's a reasonable strategy if you're rebuilding, but the Fever aren't rebuilding anymore. They have Caitlin Clark, the biggest draw in women's basketball. They have Aaliyah Boston, one of the best young centers in the league. They have Kelsey Mitchell, who just proved she can score 20 points a night in the playoffs. This roster should be adding the final pieces, not running it back on trial contracts. Monique Billings talked about fit being one of the most important things in the WNBA. She's right. But fit only matters if the pieces you're fitting together are good enough to win. And right now, Indiana's banking on internal development and system coaching to bridge the gap between playoff team and championship contender. That's asking a lot from Stephanie White in her first year, even if she is one of the best tactical minds in the league. Compare this to what Golden State's doing with their expansion roster. They're not messing around, they're targeting Gabby Williams. They're building an identity from day one. They understand that in this league, you either commit to winning or you commit to developing, and there's not much middle ground. Indiana's trying to do both, and that's a dangerous position to be in when you have the most popular player in women's basketball on your roster. Because here's what nobody's saying out loud. Caitlin Clark has leverage. Not now, but in 2 years when her rookie contract is up. And if Indiana hasn't built a championship roster around her by then, she's going to start looking at what other organizations are doing. She'll see New York's commitment to winning. She'll see Las Vegas's track record. She'll see teams that are willing to spend money and make aggressive moves. And she'll ask herself if Indiana's really the place where she can win multiple championships. The one-year deals for Sophie and Kelsey aren't just about roster flexibility. They're an admission that the front office isn't sure this core can win it all. They're keeping their options open. And in a league where windows close fast and superstar primes are short, keeping your options open might be the same thing as letting your best opportunity slip away. So here's the real question. Is this the last dance for this version of the Indiana Fever, or is it just another year of running it back and hoping for different results? Because the moves they made this offseason suggest they're not sure either, and that uncertainty, more than anything else, is what should worry Fever fans heading into next season.